It's your boy Natsu with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone. I apologize for being a little bit late, guys. Had tech issues on my end, but I have Paul here, one of my good friends who was on the channel in the past and is back on the channel today. And we're going to talk a lot about the NFL, our respective teams, because he is a native Chicagoan. So the Bears, Washington football team. And yeah, so this should be a fun one. Should be about an hour, but with that being said, Paul, for the people out there who might not know who you are or might not remember from the last time we had a stream, can you please introduce yourself to the channel?
All right, how's it going, everyone, guys? I'm Paul. Yeah, like it was said, native Chicagoan, passionate Chicago sports fan. Now living in Philly, getting my PhD in physics, but still a Chicago fan at heart. Definitely a Washington football team fan over the Eagles. So.
Yeah. That's awesome. But I guess, we're not really going to talk about them too much throughout the stream, but go Sox, go White Sox. I mean, I think we both root for the Sox. So, and they're in the playoffs right now. So the Nats aren't, the Cubs aren't. So might as well just root for the Sox at this point. But first thing I want to ask you, the thumbnail, right? Thoughts on Jalen Smith and Stefan Gilmore's surprise cuts this week. I was going to ask you, like I said, off camera, about where you see them, where you see the best fits being, but obviously they both got picked up this week. But nevertheless, what are your thoughts on the surprise cuts?
So they were definitely surprise cuts, but honestly not as impactful as people think. So, I mean, the Stefan Gilmore is obviously more important. Jalen Smith, yeah. I feel like there was a variety of issues, like red flags. I know he's had some sort of like bad media comments and sort of the fan base wasn't liking him and he wasn't performing. So that one's not that big of a deal to me. I almost kind of saw that one coming, to be honest. The Stefan Gilmore one was a little perplexing. However, he's still on the PUP list until week 7. So he can't even play till week 7. He's on a contract year and the Patriots didn't have the money to pay him.
Yeah.
So it honestly makes sense that they wanted to get rid of him, which seems strange for, what would have been considered just like an elite defender like 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, I mean, you would have given him any money, but now it's like injured, almost got cut, 6th-round pick traded,
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this in the Washington football team fan community, but Quinn Dunbar a couple years back, Ron Rivera, basically, I think it was sort of like the same situation. Quinn Dunbar was going to a contract year. He had a pretty good year before he ultimately got traded, but nevertheless, he wasn't a top 10 corner. He wasn't even, maybe a top 12 corner, but we still got a 5th-round pick from him. So that was higher competition than what the Patriots got for Stefan Gilmore, even though obviously it was for half a season, right? It wasn't for a full season, but I don't know. Don't really like the competition there, but if you're going to get something, or if you're going to trade him, might as well get something in return. But another situation that I want to ask you your thoughts on, this is from obviously earlier in the week, more so the weekend, but oh my gosh, Urban Meyer. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think he's going to last in Jacksonville for much longer?
So honestly, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but obviously what he did was pretty awful, but I think almost any coach could get away with that sort of thing. I think, honestly, he probably was lost, like he had the locker room lost just after the 0-4 start, after such a heartbreaking defeat to begin with.
Yeah.
I think if the Jags were 1-3 at least, I don't think this would be as big of a story.
Yeah.
Like, obviously it's pretty terrible that you cancel like a team meeting because you're embarrassed because of the PR from the night before after a loss. Like, that's pretty awful. It's like a very bad thing for a coach to do, but I really think he's on the hot seat because he already was on the hot seat, if that makes any sense.
No, I've heard that take. That's a pretty good one. I'll just say, okay, so personally, obviously, I do not like what he did, like off the field, and I mean that I know it's a family issue, but like, I mean, if you're supposed to be a leader of men, then might as well like act like a leader and not do those sort of things. And he has a history of doing it, leading back to his Ohio State days, and A lot of people talk about this, but there is a reason why a particular type of player seems to always come out of Ohio State. Terry McLaurin is the exception, I would say. He's a captain. I mean, he's a captain at receiver, which, especially at Ohio State, you never get. But I think the biggest problem out of this whole situation, and you probably heard about this throughout the media, but him not traveling back with the team the night of the loss, I think was pretty telling about, you know, his leadership skills and his loyalty pretty much to the team, right? I mean, he had a big contract he signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. It seemed like he was going to be there for years, and obviously the 0-4 start. But again, I think the biggest issue was just him not flying back, because I've heard from like a lot of people, Pat McAfee being one of them, who I know you probably watch and stuff, and a lot of people probably watch, but he was outraged that he didn't travel back with the team. That was like the most serious part of this whole situation for like a lot of former players and stuff. But I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
That makes sense. I personally don't think that the shenanigans are as big of a deal. It's just, you know, not traveling back with the team, canceling team meeting the next day. It's the type of thing that you could only get away with that as a player if you're like a star player, right?
Yeah.
Like even Antonio Brown at a certain point couldn't get away with the shenanigans. So I think for what's probably, you know, bottom 2, bottom 3 coaches in the NFL, it's just inexcusable.
Yeah. Okay. Back to the Washington football team. I mean, it seems like a black cloud always hovers above us. Stephen A. Smith always talks about the black cat that runs around the Cowboys facility every single year, and that's why they're never good. I feel like a true black cloud always hovers around the Washington football team off the field, at least. And what are your thoughts on the raid that struck the football team's home facilities in Ashburn? And do you think Ron Rivera could ever bring this franchise out of the never-ending drama that we've had since pretty much we've been born?
So I don't know if you've heard, but as of like this afternoon, so only a couple hours ago, I guess there was a memo sent out to agents saying that a player had been questioned by the DEA.
I did not know that. I heard about the prescription drugs and how Vermillion was pretty much prescribing them when it wasn't necessary, and that's what got him into a lot of trouble. But no, I did not hear that. Wow.
So I think the fact that they're, you know, asking questions to players, or at least one active player, is kind of a serious thing, because it's one thing that the guy's just doing it and he gets busted. But I mean, it's really spilling over onto the team, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. It's drama, bro. It's never-ending drama. Yeah. But I guess moving to the bright side of things in Ashburn, what are your thoughts on Taylor Heinicke's performance this far in the season? Do you think he's locked down the quarterback 1 position here in DC, at least for this year, maybe even beyond that?
So I don't think he has it locked down for this year, to be honest.
Okay. And
I don't think it's about him. I think he's been playing pretty solid. I think you summed it up well either last week or the week before's live stream, where you said, like, you're not winning because of him, but he's not, like, you're not losing because of him either.
Yeah.
Which, you know, is not what you want if you want your team to make a deep playoff run, but it's totally fine. But I think it's more about Fitz magic. Like, this is his career arc. He plays well. You know, he goes to a new team and then he sits behind some quarterback, or he gets hurt and he's out for half the season. And then he comes back and just, like, starts slinging bombs.
Yeah. And then gets a new contract. And
yeah. So I wouldn't put it out of the picture if Fitzmagic is back whenever week 8. I don't know when he's eligible. I think week 8 or 9, to just come back and immediately be the starter and just have it go off for a couple of games and show the magic again.
So I believe you're referring to the will Taylor Heinicke save the Washington football team season video. It might not be that, but that's where I focused a lot on Taylor Heinicke and where I thought he was going to lead this franchise. And I believe I made a similar point on that video. And that was obviously weeks ago, right? I think some things have changed in the sense that I think Taylor Heinicke is one of, if not the biggest reason why we won the last 2 games, because the defense has not showed up whatsoever. It's been piss poor. We'll get to them right after this, but it's been piss poor. And Taylor Heinicke has been the one who's been leading game-winning drives. Obviously, Terry McLaurin has a lot to do with it, right? Being open all the time, even when he's facing single, double, triple coverage. I mean, he is a monster. We'll also get to him a little bit later. But I think Taylor Heinicke, Outlaw King said it, definitely has some moxie going with him. I think essentially what he is just the younger version of the guy that he's replacing in Ron Fitzpatrick. I think they're pretty much the same quarterback. Taylor Heinicke just has, more potential, obviously, because he is younger. He isn't a rookie or anything, but he is 27, 28 years old. So he does have some more years left in the tank and hasn't really played for a while, obviously, because he was taking college classes back when we were taking college classes. But no, I think if Taylor Heinicke, as Gerald says here, I don't know if Fitz will retire, but I think if Taylor Heinicke keeps playing well, I think he definitely locked down the quarterback one position here in DC. I just don't think he's the quarterback one of the future. I just don't think that. I know.
I was actually going to ask you,
yeah,
he's got the fire. He's someone the fan base could really get behind. But do you really believe that he could lead you to a playoff victory, just like a single win, wild card weekend?
That's why I said he's a younger Fitz. I mean, they're pretty much the same quarterback. I wouldn't trust Fitz. Even when he was 30, 31 years old, he had his best season playing for the Jets. They went 10-6. Even back then, I didn't trust him as a future franchise quarterback, and I don't trust Taylor Heinicke to be that as well. PFF pointed this out this week. He made a lot of mistakes, potential interceptions that just didn't turn into interceptions, right? Like any other week when you're playing against a at least average defense, those are going to be INTs. We saw that against the Bills, right? And the Chargers, even though he came towards the second half of the game, he wasn't playing the best then. So I think Taylor Heinicke has something going right now here in DC, but I don't think he's the quarterback one of the future. I don't think Ron Rivera thinks that, and I think he's going to look towards a quarterback in the draft, even though I don't like most of the quarterbacks in this draft, or potentially getting someone who I know you're super fond of. You love him so much, love him more than your Bears, Aaron Rodgers, down here in DC. But I'd even add the question in the notes. But what are your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers and his start thus far in Green Bay? Obviously, he had that terrible week one, but I don't know. It looks like the Packers are rolling, and the Bears are not going to finish as NFC North champions once again.
No, so I had this belief during the offseason with all the Aaron Rodgers drama. Not that he was going to sit, not that he was going to force a trade, but that he was just going to play piss poor, unmotivated football to sort of get back at the organization. To sort of show hey, if I don't play well, if I'm not carrying the team, we suck.
Yeah.
And after week one, I was like, my prediction is coming true. The Packers might just suck this year because Aaron Rodgers doesn't have the fire underneath them. But then, oh man, the Niners game, when they had the last second comeback in prime time. And Aaron Rodgers was pumped on the sideline, hugging everyone, high-fiving. And I was like, oh no, Aaron Rodgers is here.
You see this too many times before, yeah.
Yeah, he's still got it. He's still highly motivated. I mean, unless he somehow gets the Jeopardy job and he retires to go host Jeopardy, I don't. It's not looking good for these Bears this year.
Yeah. But hopefully, he comes back to DC, so we're both happier because of it, right? You guys don't have to worry about Aaron Rodgers crushing your dreams every single time you face him, and we get to actually have a franchise quarterback here in DC for the first time in a long time. But that is something that the Bears and Washington definitely has in common. We just can't find a franchise quarterback. But how big, so moving back to the Washington football team, we talked about Taylor Heinicke and his great performance thus far. How big of a disappointment is the Washington football team defense in your eyes?
Oh, I think it's an incredible disappointment. I honestly don't know what it is necessarily. It almost feels like the year the Bears went to the playoffs with Mitch Trubisky with a double doink year, we got absolutely carried by our defense. But at the same time, it was a lot of I don't want to say fluky things, but sort of special season sort of. We were getting a bunch of interceptions, most pick sixes in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but think that maybe that happened to you guys last year, where you saw an anomalous year.
Yeah.
You had 1 year of this defensive masterclass, and you think you're on the up and coming, but it was in reality just sort of a little more of a fluke, and it's sort of showing this year that maybe your defense is a little more average than you thought.
Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Throughout the offseason, I was getting a little hate for this, and I know BIIIIIIG, who I keep referring to on this channel, he's sort of like a fan/media account that like is super realistic with this team, and for that gets a lot of hate. But I said throughout the offseason, he said as well, that this defense was playing against some of the worst quarterbacks in the league last year. Yeah, Nick Mullins from the 49ers. You had Andy Dalton and Ben DiNucci for the Dallas Cowboys, right? Those were our two biggest wins last year on Thanksgiving, and also I believe it was Week 7 where we crushed them as well. I mean, we were facing some of the worst quarterbacks in the league. The best quarterbacks that we did face, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, early in the season, that's when our defense was poor. That's when we couldn't contain any quarterback, whether it be if the quarterback ran the ball or if the quarterback threw the ball. We just couldn't do it. So I felt going into the season that this defense was fluky. But I thought at least they would be top half of the league. Right now, they're ranked 30th, 31st, 32nd in a lot of categories, which is
it's really bad.
Unacceptable with the defensive minds that you have right now. Jack Del Rio, Ron Rivera, like, it's not right. It's not right. Something's not right. Jack Del Rio, I believe if he doesn't get it right by the end of the season, I think he's gone. He has to be gone. Like, with all the talent that we have on the team, while I think it's a little overrated at times, it's still a top half of the league defense, like when everything's clicking. So, but I don't know. The players keep saying, we're going to get it right. We're going to get it right. We'll see how that turns out. But I definitely agree with you. Huge disappointment. Arguably the biggest disappointment in terms of units in the entire NFL. But yeah, so.
And you don't have the offense to be playing that kind of defense either. So it really snowballs.
Well, we have the offense when we're playing against mediocre to bad teams. Yes, like the Falcons and the Giants. Yes,
we can put the Falcons and the Giants.
Yeah, and the sad thing is too, like, this was our opposite problem last year. Last year was the defense that was carrying us, or at least playing the most well and was leading us to wins, and our offense just was the worst I've ever seen. Then this year, our defense is playing piss poor, and our offense is actually putting up points. I mean, I think we're averaging like 28, 27 points a game, which is like, Paul, I can't tell you, like, throughout our time, like in college, that is absolutely insane, because we had Alex Smith, Dwayne Haskins, who I keep saying last year, the worst quarterback performance I've ever seen in DC. But like we can't, we always have to have one or the other. We can't have both. Even dating back to the Kirk Cousins years. Kirk Cousins, the offense, I think a couple of years they were like second in the league in offense, second or third in the league. And our defense always stunk up the joint. So we couldn't, like, you know what I mean? Like that's a problem here in DC. But I do want to get to the state of the NFC East right now before getting to the Bears. What are your thoughts on the rest of the division? And who do you think is going to win the division? And will we potentially see with 7 teams in the NFC playoff picture, will we potentially see more than one team out of the NFC East in the playoffs this year?
So certainly the Cowboys are winning. That's like, I would bet like all my money on that right now.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Honestly, the Washington football team has a chance, and I only say that because your problem, like you said, is facing good quarterbacks. It's like you can't contain the quarterbacks, and like your secondary kind of sucks sometimes.
You know who we have up next, Paul? Like the next 5-6 weeks in terms of quarterback?
I know you have like the Chiefs, the Packers, and the Saints next 3 games, right? Saints is this weekend.
Seahawks soon to come as well. Yeah.
It's rough, but honestly, when you're in a division where you have Danny Dimes, aka Danny Fumbled, and like just the Eagles, who are absolutely trash, I feel like you could just totally get away with what should be 4 free wins. I mean, the Giants game was too close, but if your problem is good quarterback play, and half of your division just has extremely inconsistent to poor quarterback play, there's a chance you could like win just enough games to get a playoff spot. But the schedule, you could lose like the next 7 games, and that could be devastating. And then you're like in a position where you have to win out, which is just like never good.
Yeah, I definitely don't think the schedule makers gave us any favors this offseason with the I don't know, with stacking up all the NFC East games, the
Yeah,
last
and
month
they're
of
like
the
all at the
season.
end. Why is that? You play like the Eagles like, like
I mean,
every
I
other week, and
understand
then
it from like the media sense. I understand it from like the entertainment sense because NFC East always comes down to the last week, and we saw that last year. We saw that the last couple of years, really. But I don't know. I don't know. The teams that we have up next, man. The Packers, or I'm sorry, the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Seahawks. Man, I mean, the Saints this week, who look more beatable right after losing against the Giants, but they're super inconsistent. One week they could be super bad. The next week they could crush the Packers, right? Like that's the state of the Saints in 2021 and Jameis Winston being at the quarterback position. But I don't know. I don't know. I think I agree with you. Unfortunately, the Cowboys look like they're gonna capture the division crown. Just has to be said. Their offense, we all knew their offense was going to be top notch going into the season, even with Dak Prescott missing most of last season. But their defense is what I think is surprising me. Their defense is better than our defense, and that is absolutely atrocious. That's pathetic. That is absolutely pathetic that the Dallas Cowboys defense right now is playing better than the Washington football team defense with all the talent that we have and with how bad the Cowboys defense has been over the last couple of years. But yeah, we'll get to the defense, Chicago defense, Gerald. But I first want to ask you, of course, with the news earlier this week that Justin Fields, the Ohio State quarterback, and we know something about Ohio State quarterbacks here in DC, unfortunately. Is Justin Fields the right guy at starter for the Bears right now, being named the starter earlier this week? And
I think
how about not just now in this season, but into the future?
so. He has to be the starter now. And I know our good friend John, Sports Talk Chicago, has been on the start Andy Dalton train because he doesn't like throwing the rookies in when we have no offensive line, which I totally understand.
Yeah.
But now that Andy Dalton was hurt, and you were already sort of mixing in Justin Fields' snaps for some reason, I don't like Nagy's coaching style at all, but you were already mixing in snaps, and then he gets to start because Andy Dalton's injured. You kind of just have to keep starting him. You can't sort of play this game where you bench him, you don't bench him, you're playing him for half the snaps. So he has to be the starter, but I don't think we'll know until middle of next year whether or not he'll be the guy, which is kind of unfortunate because, I mean, Matt Nagy can't call plays, as evidenced by the fact that he, relegated the play callings against Detroit. So we have no offensive line. So I really think next year will be, a better showing of if he's actually the guy.
I'll just say, I'll leave it at this. I don't trust Ohio State quarterbacks. And Justin Fields has not shown me, obviously he hasn't really played much up until this point, but he has not shown me enough to back down from that opinion. And hopefully I'm praying that he's the guy out of Ohio State that actually does well and breaks this curse for that college. But I don't know, man. I really don't know. But again,
he has to be the guy.
I know he has to be the guy. He has to be the guy. And I hope for Chicago's sake, he is the guy because Chicago, the city, deserves a franchise quarterback. It's been, I mean, I don't think the Bears have ever had a true franchise quarterback. Maybe McMahon on that Super Bowl run, but I think it was the defense that was
Not
obviously
even,
carrying the team. Yeah. So, but yeah, so I guess we'll get to Gerald's point right now. Chicago's defense.
It's been
yeah, go ahead.
It's been average. And I don't think that's necessarily a problem. That is by far not the biggest problem we have with the Bears. I think so. 2 years ago, defense was great, incredible, capable of carrying us to the playoffs. Last year, we saw that you have some major flaws, specifically when you have basically any injury on the defense, it kind of snowballs, where then they start attacking these positions. For example, when Khalil Mack is out or when Akeem Hicks is out, one of those two being out is catastrophic for our defense. So I think the fact that we're sort of middle of the pack defense this year is actually a good thing. It's kind of what I expected.
Okay. The offense just needs to step it up, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we need an offensive line.
Speaking of, I believe I messaged you this over Twitter, if I'm not mistaken, but man, this is 2 years in a row a Bears offensive lineman, a left tackle to be more specific, or I guess I'll just say offensive tackle. Bears fans were clamoring for that player to no longer be a member of the Chicago Bears, trashing the offensive tackle 2 years in a row that Washington has picked up one of your offensive tackles for cheap, and we've turned them into pretty much all pros, it seemed like, per PFF. I mean, first it was Cornelius Lucas last year. Now it's Charles Leno. I mean, do you think the Bears could be using them right now, or do you think it's more so an offensive line coach sort of problem if you see two of like the players that you guys were trashing for so long come over to a different franchise and they both succeed in that franchise? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
It's hard for me to say that I wish we had Charles Leno back because I watched too many games where he was just getting absolutely destroyed. So
yeah,
it must be a coaching issue.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, also you guys just have like more talent on the line than we do to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's like just the fact that you can more evenly spread things out versus like, our offensive linemen, it's like just a bunch of randos out there. So of course, it's
completely different. I get that. And I also think I messaged you this as well, but like we have offensive line coaches, like we have stud offensive line coaches, like the Packers have quarterbacks, man. Like I don't know, it's just that's the one thing that we've been known for really back to like the 80s, man, when we were winning actual like Super Bowls and stuff. Like our offensive line coaches have always been very good. Even like over the last 10 years, we had Bill Callahan for a time, who was known as one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. Now we have, I believe, Matsko, who is another great offensive line coach. So I don't fault the Bears too much. I don't fault Bears fans too much for wanting those two players to be gone. I just think it says more about like, I don't know, the offensive line infrastructure that we have here in DC. But he got Sports, Abdullah, another content creator on this channel. It's kind of funny. I don't think he realizes this, but you are a big Notre Dame fan, and VT will be playing Notre Dame this weekend. Do you think it's an easy dub for Notre Dame?
I don't know, man. Notre Dame's had some issues. I don't know if you watched the Cincinnati game.
Mm-hmm, a little bit of
it,
yeah.
I mean, we're going through like 3 quarterbacks in a game. I mean, come on. I don't know what's going on. How do you not have that figured out before the game? Like when you're mid-game and it's like a top 10 matchup and you're like basically testing out quarterbacks, like what's going on? Yeah. I don't know what to think about Notre Dame.
I hope that Enter Sandman riles up the entire VT football team and they pull out the W. But I think it's going to be tough. I think it's definitely going to be
Notre Dame can lose to anybody. They can lose to anybody. I don't know.
That's fair. I will say, if Virginia Tech wins, Abdullah is going to be at the game, I believe, and he's going to probably have a vlog or something. If they win, that's great for this channel, obviously, right? Because the content will be, spectacular. But I don't know. It's going to be tough for sure. But I do want to get to some other facets of the Bears that are problematic right now. And the first one, and this is something that I'll give credit where credit's due to John. He's been on top of this for a long time. But is this Matt Nagy's last season as head coach of the Bears? And even beyond Nagy, how about Ryan Pace, who I still don't think is getting enough talk, at least outside of Chicago?
I think they should both be gone. They should have both been gone last year. So I'm hoping that Matt Nagy's gone. Like I said, he like relegated play calling to laser like for the Detroit game, which we played significantly better. So I think John said this on a YouTube or a Twitter clip, but if he was on the hot seat, people were saying he's going to get fired if he loses to the Lions, which I'm not sure I believe they'd fire him midseason. Yeah. But that was like the sort of hot take on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
If he was, they're considering firing him, and then he says, all right, I'm not going to call the play calls this week, and then the team does better. It's like, I don't know what to say. He better be gone after this year.
Okay. To be fair, I agree with you for the most part, but to be fair, it was the Lions. Their defense has been the worst.
They almost beat the Ravens. I don't know. The Lions have been playing competitive. They've been playing competitive. They have a coach that actually gets them excited to play. presumably, compared to Matt Patricia. So
it's still, you got to remember though, Paul, at least if we're talking about the rush defense for the Lions, it's always been bad, bro. So, I mean, that's why you had David Montgomery before he got injured, playing pretty well. Then Damian Williams also playing pretty well as well. So, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like that win said more about the matchup, just like our win said more about the matchup when it comes to the Falcons and the Giants over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, I agree with you. I think at least for Nagy, I feel like for Nagy especially, this might be the last season. If the Bears don't win enough games or at least show something for Bears fans to be excited about.
He's on QB number 4. I mean, once you hit QB number 4, how can you still be the head coach?
Well, to be fair, I mean, we've had 7, 8 quarterbacks over the last couple of years, even under Ron Rivera. So I feel like I think if Nagy does not develop Justin Fields to the point where you guys Bears fans are at least somewhat excited for Fields and his future in Chicago, then yeah, I think you got to cut bait and ultimately fire him. But the last Bears question I want to ask you before getting into these upcoming matchups this weekend is how big of a loss do you think running back David Montgomery being out for at least the next month will be for the Chicago Bears?
So it's obviously a huge loss for the Bears. However, I don't think it'll matter because I don't see a winnable game for the next 6 or 7 weeks. So in a sense, it's horrible because now Justin Fields, who already has no offensive line, now is going to have, probably our biggest offensive weapon, like the run game, David Montgomery, not there. He's just going to get beat up. And there's no way around it. So it sucks for Justin Fields. I think that's the biggest issue. I really don't think we were going to win any of these upcoming games anyway. Even with David Montgomery, it's just some pretty terrible matchups.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it doesn't matter too much.
Okay, I get that take.
Yeah. And the fact that it wasn't a serious injury is more important too for next season and the following seasons. So
yeah, hopefully when a franchise quarterback is truly in tow for the Bears. But I agree with you and I disagree at the same time. So I think in terms of what you said, the schedule and stuff, yeah, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference because the Bears do have some very good teams coming up, starting with the Raiders. But I think in terms of the run game, I'll also agree with you. I don't think it will be much of a difference. I think we're selling Damian Williams short, in terms of his potential, right? I think, a lot of people forget a couple years back, obviously it was the Kansas City Chiefs, right? But Damian Williams was a key part on that Chiefs Super Bowl run. He was a monster, especially in that playoffs. And I think he has something. I think he'll give the Bears something. I mean, there's a reason why I picked him up in fantasy this year, in the only fantasy league that I'm in. But no, I think he will do well. I think the Raiders' rush defense is pretty poor, so I think the Bears will be able to run the ball on the Raiders. But yeah, I agree with you in terms of the pass game. Justin Fields. I mean, you have Allen Robinson, and I'll ask you a interesting question about Allen Robinson soon to come. But Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney. I mean, a lot of people were hyping him up as a potential breakout candidate this year. Do you think that's still a possibility?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's the leading. He has the most reception yards of the team.
On the team?
But I still don't think that's a breakout year. I think that just reflects on how poorly our offense is run. Yeah. I think it's fair to say no one's having a breakout year under Matt Nagy. So I don't really see that happening.
I feel especially bad for Allen Robinson because we've been talking about this in discussions in college for a long time. But I mean, the Bears should have signed Allen Robinson to a contract long ago, right? And now I don't know. I just hate it because he's sort of in the same situation that Terry McLaurin's in, right? Just terrible quarterback after terrible quarterback. Now you have Justin Fields who potentially could be something, just like Taylor Heinicke potentially could be something. But I don't know. I hope for Allen Robinson's sake he stays healthy and he has a quarterback that can actually get him the ball week in and week out.
Yeah. Yeah, he deserved like a blank check for what we put him through in Chicago. So I don't know why we didn't give him like any amount of money.
Yeah. Speaking of Allen Robinson, perfect segue. Who is the better receiver, Allen Robinson or Terry McLaurin?
I think right now it's unquestionably Allen Robinson. The thing about
I thought you were literally going to end that by saying Terry McLaurin after you said unquestionably.
no,
Okay, this is
so
a hot
here's
take. Go ahead.
I'm a huge Terry fan, and in a lot of ways, he, like you just said, he is like Allen Robinson, and I think he has like the longest active catch streak, right, in the NFL, which is crazy coming from you'd think that there'd be a better quarterback throwing the ball.
Yeah,
that'd be like Patrick Mahomes or something, but I don't think he's shown me quite enough yet, especially with just how consistent Allen Robinson is and has been over the past like 5-6 years. So the thing I like about Terry, though, I will say, is he's so much more of like a team first guy. And I do not blame Allen Robinson for not being team first when the team won't pay him and the team sucks and he has to go through like quarterbacks that can't throw him the ball. But like as a fan, I kind of like Terry a lot more, especially when he says things like last season where he was like, "Oh yeah, I love to block. Like I love to block for my guys." Like that's the type of stuff I love.
I think that's
from
still
a wide
pinned
receiver,
on his
but
Twitter page. Like from his Ohio State days, he was like, "This is what I love to do," and it wasn't even a catch. It was like a block on a big Ohio State like receiving touchdown and stuff. I think that's still pinned on his Twitter page. But
yeah, and that's why I think he will be better than Allen Robinson. But
it's still unquestionably Allen Robinson right now.
I still think he's unquestionably Allen Robinson right now.
Wow, this is kind of a shocker. I really thought you were gonna be like, you know what? I hate to say it, but Terry McLaurin might be better right now. But no, you talked about consistency. I'll give you this. Allen Robinson definitely has been more consistent over a longer period of time. I'll say that. But this year, if we're talking about 2021, undoubtedly, Terry McLaurin is the better receiver right now. I mean, he has the speed. He has a leadership ability. I mentioned this. Captain at receiver from Ohio State. That never happens. Never happens. Every single receiver, most of the receivers that I could think of right now off the top of my head from Ohio State are absolute divas, right? Terry McLaurin is the antithesis of all that. Okay. Then you also have the crisp route running, which, is amazing when you have a younger quarterback here in Jaylon Heinicke, right, who needs to see his receivers get open. And Terry McLaurin is consistently open against the best of them. I mean, he gets number one cornerback coverage every single week, and he still balls out. Obviously, last week it was against the Falcons. I'll give you that. But, I mean, I don't know if you saw that last touchdown from Terry McLaurin where he basically just found like a little space in the end zone and Taylor Heinicke just threw up a prayer and Terry McLaurin just ultimately caught the ball, and that really kept the momentum going for the Washington football team. But I think Terry McLaurin, what he's shown to start this season with an actual at least mediocre quarterback play here in DC, at least mediocre quarterback play, he's definitely better than Allen Robinson, and he's a top 10 receiver right now in the league. Going into the offseason and then going to the season, I was in the same boat. That Allen Robinson was better. Terry McLaurin needed to show me more. And this was coming from me. Terry McLaurin is my favorite player in the NFL right now, right?
You think top 10?
Yes,
top 10?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Paul, if you think this is crazy, there are people in this fan base, in this chat, that are saying that Terry McLaurin was a top 10 receiver last year. Okay, so I was one of the people to hold out that opinion that Terry McLaurin was top 10 until I really, really, really felt comfortable about that take. And now I feel really comfortable about it.
I mean, I'll give you this. He is performing.
He's on pace
like you're saying.
Yeah,
like he is going crazy to start the season. Yeah. And if he keeps it up for even until like week 10, week 12, like he'll be better than Allen Robinson at that point. But I'm not ready to, I still think it's pretty definitive. Okay. You can't say much over just like, a 3-game stretch.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, for me, it was neck and neck going into the offseason, and I feel like Terry just has overtaken Allen Robinson to start the season. Things can change, obviously, but I don't know, man. I know if Terry McLaurin was on the Bears right now and Al Robinson was on my team, I know you'd be saying something different because I like being able to watch Terry McLaurin week in and week out, just absolutely ball, no matter the quarterback. I know Al Robinson was the same, but especially this year, like I don't know. I feel like Terry McLaurin is I've been saying this for several years now. If he was 2 to 3 inches taller, he'd be the absolute perfect receiver. The absolute perfect receiver.
Oh,
no
yeah.
flaws.
For sure.
And he's already I think PFF even talks about this. He always makes contested catches. He isn't even that bad when it comes to just corralling the ball down the field and doing those mossing defensive backs and all that. But I continue to say this. If he 2-3 inches taller, absolute perfect receiver. I think Terry McLaurin is going to be in the Pro Bowl this year as well. I don't know if that's a hot take. I know the NFC receivers are stacked right now, but I think Justin Jefferson has fallen a little bit, and I think Terry McLaurin is going to rise, and I think he's going to be that last NFC receiver this year. But yeah, I agree with Gerald here. I think people across the league are still underselling Terry. He wasn't even on the top 100 list. I'm still pissed about that.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. I think the Cole Beasley choice over Terry was just absolutely absurd. I don't know where that came from, but
maybe a lot of anti-vaxxers in the league right now. Just a Cole hero, but
I guess Bradley Beal is in charge of the list.
We'll get to the Wizards if we have enough time. We'll get to the Wizards a little bit later, but now I want to move to the matchups. Obviously for our two teams this upcoming weekend. So we'll start with the Washington matchup because this is Washington Football Weekly. What are your thoughts on the Washington versus Saints matchup? Do you think the Saints will actually put up a consistently good offensive performance this week? Do you think Washington defense will finally get right in this game? And who do you ultimately have winning it?
So I'll start with saying that I have the Saints winning it. And I don't think that's too big of a surprise. I think the issue is, you're not going to stop Alvin Kamara. Period. I don't think.
Especially after Patterson last week, Cordell Patterson. What, 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns? Yeah.
And it's just Alvin Kamara. Come on. He's just such a multifaceted player. I think he's going to put up numbers on your team regardless. I think it comes down to, can you stop Taysom Hill from these really stupid red zone touchdowns that teams just give him for free? They're just letting him just
last week. Literally ran over 6 defensive players in the Giants.
You just let a quarterback just hit stick you for no reason. And then especially when he goes when he gets receptions, he's getting passes. This happened in the Bears playoff game. How are you leaving this man open? I don't know what's going on in these teams' secondaries that they just forget Taysom Hill exists. I could go out there and cover him, no offense, but he's not a great wide receiver. I don't know why teams just give him maybe it's because they know he isn't as fast as an actual wide receiver. I have no idea what's going on.
Or maybe Sean Payton is just the offensive mastermind that he is. He'll always find a way to get him open.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that whatsoever. But it just, if you can, I think once teams figure out this Taysom Hill trickery, I almost want to call it fluke.
Once this happens, we've been saying this for a couple of years now. I don't think it's going to happen, Paul. I don't think it's going to happen. How many years has Taysom Hill been doing this now? Just I don't know, just being that gadget player for the Saints, and he just ultimately, finds an open spot.
Although his role's different though. His role used to be we'll put him out there and he'll either run the ball or he'd be the one to throw the ball 50 yards because Drew Brees can't throw it 50 yards downfield.
Yeah.
Now if you want to throw the ball 50 yards, you got the guy to throw 50 yards, Jameis done. So now I don't understand as much of a threat. He really just seems like a fullback who can pass the ball. I don't really know. I think teams just need to figure him out in the red zone and stop giving up those stupid touchdowns like the Giants did. But I honestly think that's the key to beating the Saints. But yeah, I think I had the score being maybe 24-14-ish, but maybe closer than it looks.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's hard. I think Alvin Kamara is going to go off, but he does every week.
Okay, that's fair. I think this might be a hot take. I think Taysom Hill is going to have a bigger game than Alvin Kamara because I think when it comes to I feel like Alvin Kamara, yes, he's a superstar running back in this league. I feel like Washington, though, I think this is the game where at least their rush defense shows up because John Bostic isn't playing. I don't know if you know who John Bostic is. John Bostic, to me, has been – so how high John has been on Mitch Trubisky over the last couple of years, or in terms of like how big of a supporter he's been of Mitchell Trubisky, is how big of a I don't know, of an opponent I am or have been in John Bostic over these last couple of years. John Bostic was playing absolutely bad here in DC over the last couple of years. He had a 25 PFF rating to start the season. 25 PFF rating. Ultimately, I think he's out for the season right now. Had a torn pec injury, if I'm not mistaken. But now it's Jamin Davis time, and you might remember Jamin Davis because we picked him at 19. The Bears were supposed to have the 20th pick. They potentially could have got him, but obviously moved up to get Justin Fields. But I think Jamin Davis is super fast. I think he's able to cover much better than John Bostic, and I think he can stop the run maybe as good as John Bostic. So when you have that combo, I think that's pretty good. Cole Holcomb, I'm not too fond of, but I think he's a good rush defender. I think overall, obviously the defensive line in DC, I think overall they'll be able to contain Alvin Kamara on the ground. I just think Taysom Hill, being the gadget type of player, we always suck against gadget type of players. Curtis Samuel last year, who's now in DC, of course. Cordero Patterson, like just last week. Like we always suck against these gadget type of players, and I think that we will continue to do that against Taysom Hill. I ultimately do think, though, that Washington will pull out the W. Based off the Saints' performance, yes. Based off the Saints' performance last week, but I think it's going to be much closer. I think it's going to be 28-27 Washington. I think Taylor Heinicke is going to be able to put up that many points. Yes, because I am that confident in his ability to do so. I mean, this is going back to the Bucs game last year in the playoffs. Like I think you got to be confident in Taylor Heinicke's abilities at least to put up points on the scoreboard, and I think I will continue to be that this week. I don't think this is a defensive get-right game, so I still have them giving up 27 to the Saints, but I think Washington will eventually pull out the W. I wouldn't be surprised with the Washington football team being the Washington football team. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Saints blowout because that's usually the way things go, right? You think it's gonna be a close game, and then like we ultimately just fall flat. But that's how I think the Washington versus Saints matchup is gonna go. How about the Bears versus Las Vegas Raiders matchup this weekend? Do you think Justin Fields will show you something and potentially push the ball down the field? Do you think Damian Williams will keep the run game going? Do you think the Bears defense will be able to contain Derek Carr, who outside of last week has had a pretty hot start to the season? What are your thoughts?
So I'm personally super, super, super high on the Raiders.
Even after last week?
And it might be, well, okay. It might be a personal preference for Derek Carr because I think he's he's definitely the most underrated quarterback in the league.
Just like Terry's the most underrated receiver.
Honestly, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But
go ahead. So.
There's not a lot of things that Derek Carr, like other elite quarterbacks, do that Derek Carr can't do.
Okay.
And I don't know what happened last week in a primetime game. The first half was just ugly. But they did fight their way back into it. As corny as John Gruden is, I am a fan. I'm a fan of his coaching style. And, they got the new stadium in Vegas. What's not to love? The Bears are going to get crushed. I don't know if the Bears are going to score a touchdown, especially without David Montgomery.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be like 21-6 or something crazy, 24-6. I'm not feeling very good. I'm very high on these Raiders, if you can't tell, by the way.
Yeah, no, definitely could tell. Bears fans might feel differently. I think Damian Williams is going to hold his own for this Bears rushing attack. I think he will actually be pretty productive against the Raiders. So I don't think your rush game will be the problem. I don't think it will cost you the game. I think the passing game is very worrisome. Justin Fields obviously has not had much playing time to start the season, and I think that's, even though the Raiders defense is not good, I think that's still not going to put the Bears in a good position to ultimately come out with the W. I think the Bears defense, you said it, it's average. I think they won't allow Derek Carr to just I don't know, rack up the touchdowns. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the Raiders are going to pull out the W. And I'm going to use your score for the Washington Saints game, 24-14. I think it's going to be something like that.
Yeah. I just can't see the Bears moving the ball at all without David Montgomery, to be honest with you. I mean, there's just going to be so many like third and long plays where there's just like some super convoluted like random play, and then you just like lose 5 yards. And that's the Matt Nagy special, although hopefully he's not calling plays anymore. So
that's sad as a head coach. But I will say this. You might remember this, you might not remember this, but I've been high on David Montgomery since the draft, right? Since he got drafted by the Bears, 3rd-round pick. Really since his college days. And obviously that first year and a half, my feeling about him and like how I talked about him on like Twitter and stuff, I was a little bit worried, right? Because he did not start off well, but I'm glad that, he, especially last year, he had that monster stretch towards the end of the season. Obviously was I think fantasy running back 1 or like, I don't know, top 5 running back in all of football last year towards the second half of the season. And then to start the season, he's been pretty solid, but unfortunately he is out for the next month. I hope he comes back soon and is better than ever. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't think the Bears, I still think Damian Williams will be able to rush the ball in this Raiders defense. I just think that Justin Fields and the Bears passing attack will be what ultimately costs the Bears this game. I just think it's not, I'm not even going to use the word prolific. I was about to say, I don't think it's prolific enough. I don't think it's like average enough, like to really put up points. But yeah, that's how I think the Chicago versus Las Vegas matchup shapes out this weekend. Now I want to ask you about some other questions, some questions not really pertaining to any one of our football teams. But first question I want to ask you, who do you have playing in and winning the Super Bowl this season?
So it's a little tight, but I have a good feeling about the Bills this year. And it's not just because they destroyed your football team.
Yeah. Huh.
I just have a good feeling. Bills Bucks. It's going to be hard though because Tom Brady. I don't know. I was thinking the Rams. The Rams were looking really good, but then they lost this past week, and I don't know what to think. It seems like this year there's a lot more parity throughout the league, and I mean it could just be because the Chiefs are 2-2 and last in the division, but it really feels like there's not like a clear favorite or two. Like I have a hard time picking teams other than the Bucks and the Bills that I feel like super confident could make a deep run right now.
No, I definitely agree with you. Going to the season, you want to see this on the notes, but going to the season, I did have it being Packers versus Chiefs to Bears fans' dismay. This being the last dance in Green Bay for Aaron Rodgers and even Devontae Adams. I don't know. I don't know about the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs, this is kind of weird, but the Chiefs out of those two teams are the one that I'm least confident in, actually. They have not played well to start the season, but I mean, I feel like the Chiefs, obviously, they'll get right. They'll get right, and they'll be the Kansas City Chiefs of old and potentially could be in the Super Bowl picture towards the end of the season. But I agree with you. The Bills, arguably, I had the Rams as the best team of football before last week's loss to the Cardinals, I believe. But now it has to be the Bills. I think even Stephen A. Smith said this on First Take. I think the Bills have to be, and Stephen A. Smith is usually not right with his football takes, but this one I think he's right on. I think the Bills have to be the best team in the NFL right now. I mean, we've all known about their offense, right? Stefan Diggs, DMV native, and you have Josh Allen, who, you know this. I've been higher on Josh Allen than most people out here on these Twitter streets. In Chicago, really across the country. Like going to the draft, everybody's talking about how inconsistent he is. He always misses the open receiver when he's like 2 yards in front of him and all that. I've always been a big believer in his ability, and I thought that eventually he would be a stud quarterback in this league. Last year, I mean, like, come on. I mean, he's in the MVP picture. I thought he could have potentially won the MVP last year. Was really taking the Bills a long way, potentially could have made the Super Bowl last year. This year, I think the Bills, I might actually change my prediction. And go Packers versus Bills for my Super Bowl. Yeah. But I don't know if you agree or disagree with the Packers team being in my predicted Super Bowl, but I just think, yeah.
I'd like to think that the Packers will lose in some epic fashion like they did last year again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that would be a fitting way to end the Rodgers era in Green Bay. It's like maybe this time they decide to go for it on 4th down instead of kicking the field goal, and it doesn't work, and then it's more drama.
Yeah, that would definitely be fitting. And again, I think it would help both of our teams if he just travels a little bit south of DC and finish up his career here. But I want to ask you about some NBA questions. I know you're a huge NBA fan, particularly a fan of the obviously Chicago Bulls. How about them Bulls? They made a lot of moves in the offseason. DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball. Now they have a pretty stud starting lineup, right? Have some pretty good bench pieces. What are your thoughts on the Bulls this year? How good do you think they will be? And potentially could they be not just a playoff team in the East, but maybe like a top half playoff team, especially with the way the 76ers are blowing up in front of our faces?
I have never been more excited about the Bulls since Derrick Rose, for sure.
Wow.
And so I guess I will say a word of caution is that I know the Bulls went off against your Cleveland Cavaliers, who are now probably the punching bag of the league, in a preseason game, and like Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan dunking all over the Cavs, which is kind of disrespectful in a preseason game, but it's okay. I'm a little worried about how the team is going to, function, like what our offensive like sets are going to look like, because obviously you want the ball going through Lonzo. Like you want him taking up the ball. You want him like running the plays.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you also have Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, like two players that I feel like would fit very well together without Lonzo. Like they could play like a 2-man game without Lonzo. And I just hope that Vooch like gets a consistent amount of touches too. And hopefully because he's a big man that can shoot the three, like he will, because they'll like leave him open all the time. I mean, you have to pick who you want to guard on this team. And
yeah.
But in terms of being a top half playoff team, I think almost certainly. And this is partially because the Nets are also kind of blowing up with the whole Kyrie Irving situation. There's that deserves a whole show in its own, the Kyrie Irving situation. But they're blowing up. The Sixers blowing up.
Yeah. So, sorry to cut you off. I was just about to say, for the people out there who might not know this, Kyrie Irving from the years 2011 and 2017 was my favorite NBA player. Looking back on that time, wow. That's all I could say. Go ahead.
Oh man, I can't believe it. You think he's gonna play? Just yes or no?
It changed. My opinion changes every single day. I mean, I feel like he's just so stuck in his ways that I don't know. We did say Andrew Wiggins ultimately get the vaccine right after that long holdout.
Andrew Wiggins also isn't a flat earther, so
yeah, I don't know. I really
it's not looking good. Yeah, if I had to pick today, I'd say no, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Bulls are looking great. Obviously, we need to see how it works in the season and actually playing teams that aren't the Cleveland Cavaliers. But
jab. Yeah, I think the Bulls could definitely be a top half Eastern Conference playoff team. Especially the 76ers again, the Nets. I said this in the offseason. I'll keep saying this. I don't really like the DeMar DeRozan fit in the lineup right now because he isn't. I mean, I don't really like DeMar DeRozan as a player, to be honest, right now in the league, like in terms of someone who's going to get you over the top, because of the fact that, this is 2021. The league right now is a lot about shooters, right? Like inconsistent shooting. And I don't think DeMar DeRozan at the three will give you that. That might be a hot take, but
I agree. The thing is, DeMar DeRozan is like the most consistent mid-range game in the league.
Yeah, mid-range game, which
And
is
that's kind of what we need, though.
I know. I trust me, Paul. I get it. Like, I was a huge fan of Chris Paul and like him bringing back the mid-range. I get it. I really appreciate that. But I'm just saying, in terms of taking the Bulls over the top, like you paid all that money to these couple of guys, like in the offseason, like I don't know. Like I feel like there'll be a top half of the Eastern Conference playoff team, but I don't think they'll make like a long like playoff run or anything. I think maybe a year away.
Think about the Atlanta Hawks lineup though. It's like a deep lineup, and arguably, I know they had Trae Young.
Better than any player Bulls, yes.
You're right, but I still think he's overrated. You're right, but he's overrated.
Okay.
They definitely don't have the like evenly spread star power that the Bulls have right now. Like John Collins is great, but no Vooch, also an all-star, right? Now we got Lonzo, now we got DeMar DeRozan. And they were able to make it
very good.
They do have Clint Capella too. Mm-hmm. But if they're capable of making an Eastern Conference Finals run and like getting close, like Game 6, close to the finals, I don't see why the Bulls are any different.
That's fair. They also have I can't pronounce his name. Huerter, Huerter, the redhead.
Yeah, Herter.
University of Maryland. Yes, go Terps. Shooter, Trae Young, shooter. So I feel like, again, the Bulls need to get another shooter on this team, and they should be all right. But like this year, again, I still think they're going to be a top half of the Eastern Conference playoff team, right? I don't think they're going to be bad by any sense. They're going to be much better than the Cavs for sure, much better than the team that we're about to talk about next for sure. But I think they definitely have their faults, and I think that will ultimately prevent them from getting to where they want to go. But the next team, obviously, that I want to ask you about, the Wizards. I know Ed Oliver, the second biggest like podcaster, YouTuber in this Washington football team community who we've had on previously. He isn't necessarily like, oh my gosh, the Wizards are going to be absolutely great this year, but he is kind of high on them, and he always gets at me for being down on the Wizards. I'm not saying high in terms of like top 3 of the Eastern Conference, right? I'm saying like in terms of maybe 5 or 6 seed. Like that's the high for the Wizards, right? For me,
really high.
Personally, I know. For me, I'm super down on the Wizards. I've been down on the Wizards for the last couple of years, really, and I've been getting a little bit of slack for it. How do you see the Wizards season planning out right now? And this was even before the whole Bradley Beal stuff.
Yeah, so the Spencer Dinwiddie pickup, I think, is bigger than people realize. A former Bull, by the way. Former Bull. We released him, of course. Yeah. Classic Bulls material.
But made a name for himself for the Nets, though, if we're going to be honest.
Yeah. No. I mean, not only like he was most improved player, right? I mean, certainly. He was like almost all-star caliber before like the Nets started picking up, superstars. I really think, even though you lost Russ, I think it's like sort of an even sort of trade. Like you picked up some depth, and you got Spencer Dinwiddie, who has the potential to be an all-star, especially on the Wizards. I think, assuming the Bradley Beal situation is fine and like he gets to play every game, like regardless of where it is, I think it's like even split. Like you'll probably be an 8 or 9 seed, same as last year.
Okay. I think, I think they will be a team that will potentially fight for a play-in spot, but no better than that. I am not high on the Wizards. I think going from Russell Westbrook to Spencer Dinwiddie, obviously there's a lot that happened in between. I think that's a downgrade. I also think that the Lakers, I don't know why Wizards fans are so excited about the Lakers players that we brought over. Like, I'm not excited about any one of them. Montrezl Harrell was not himself last year. Maybe that had a lot to do with just the Lakers and how they play, right? Because he did play pretty well for the Clippers. But I would say Montrezl Harrell is probably the highest, the best player out of the bunch that we brought over. Kyle Kuzma, I don't like him. I don't like him whatsoever. I don't understand the fans' excitement over him. I mean, sure, a couple of games of the season, he'll be pretty good. He'll give you very good production, 30-plus points, 25-plus points. And there will be most of the games where he's just piss poor. He's just not good. He's not consistent. And you can't have that as your starting 3, which is what they're projected to have, at least to start the season.
But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Obviously, Russ is way better than Spencer Dinwiddie.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big downgrade. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
However, I do think that a problem with the Wizards was like consistency, because you had a lot of you had a lot of G Leaguers. You had a lot of G Leaguers out there playing last year, and if you made the playoffs, like not the play-ins, that you made the playoffs.
Yeah.
Where your team is like mostly G League players plus Beal and Russ and Robin Lopez, it's hard for me to believe that they can't go on a similar run. You know, I think because they have a potential all-star in Spencer Dinwiddie. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like healthy playing the whole year if he's an all-star. Plus, now you sort of evened out your team a little bit. I imagine they could be about the same.
Players.
But better than G Leaguers. Better than the G Leaguers you guys had out there, though. That's for sure.
But it's the NBA. Like, I think a lot of people forget this. It's the NBA, not the NFL, right? In the NBA, you need as many superstars as possible to win a championship in the year 2021. That's just the way it is. That's why the Lakers went out and got Russell Westbrook. People were like worried about the fit and stuff. Like, it's all about the stars in the NBA. This is not the NFL where you actually have to build a team. And sure, you could have a Patrick Mahomes, but you need other players, right, outside of him. We saw that during the Super Bowl, right? You didn't have an offensive line. They got shellacked by the Bucks. We saw what happened. The Wizards they have one superstar. Well, okay. Borderline superstar, in my opinion, and Bradley Beal. That's it. Like, that's not going to take you anywhere. Spencer Dinwiddie, you're right. I think he has a lot of promise, for sure. But he's not better than Russell Westbrook. You need as many stars as possible in this league to win a championship. The Wizards don't have that. Corey Kispert could be somebody. Out of Gonzaga, I know Abdullah, another content creator on this channel, super high on him. But
I totally agree with you that you need the superstars to win, but like the Washington Wizards aren't trying to win a championship right now.
I know.
They're trying to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I mean, I use the Hawks as an example again. Like, it's not like the Hawks are like a super team by any stretch. Like, they have one superstar.
John Collins. I think he's an underrated player in this league. I think he's better than Spencer Dinwiddie at least. Clint Capella, they also have, who I think.
But I mean, like, but what I'm saying is they don't have like three superstars. They're not the Nets, the Lakers. They're not the Bucks.
True.
So I still think it's possible that you guys, make the playoffs, do well, win some games in the East.
Okay. I guess we'll leave it at that. Last question I wanted to ask you. Okay, let me. I didn't prepare this, but Gerald asked this question. Sorry, Gerald, for not getting to it until now. But Bears trade Andy Dalton before the 2021 trade deadline. Do you see that happening, or do you see him continuing to be the backup in Chicago?
I feel like he's been so supportive. I feel like he'll continue to be the backup in Chicago. Like, it's only been positive news. I was hoping that we'd be able to get something for Nick Foles, who, by the way, is still making a lot of money. But I really don't see any quarterback moves from the Bulls in terms of trades.
Yeah. Okay. And last question I want to ask you, going back to the NBA, who do you have making it and winning the NBA Finals right now? Keep in mind the stuff that's going on with the Nets.
So, because of the choice would be the Nets if Kyrie Irving was available. I think without a doubt. But I think the team, and I'm not a huge fan, but I think the Bucks have the best shot to win the championship. And part of the reason is not only did they show that they could win, I mean, they literally won, but they kept the team pretty consistently.
Yeah.
And, they were able to re-sign Bobby Portis, which is huge.
The NFL.
And they didn't. And like DiVincenzo was hurt for the majority of the playoff run. He'll be back. True. So he'll fill like a role spot for some of the role players that are gone. I mean, it really feels like nothing changed. Like, I don't see any reason the Bucks can't win. And I know you're probably going to say the Lakers. But you have to ask yourself this. Do you think LeBron and Russ alone could win the championship? Because I simply don't trust Anthony Davis to be there for you. Like,
okay. I would have said Lakers regardless, even if the Nets were healthy. This is literally the 2019 offseason all over again. Deja vu. When it comes to people selling LeBron James short, and he ultimately the next year proves to people that he's still the king. I think he's still the best player in the league. That might be a hot take, especially for someone like you who watches the NBA consistently and stuff. But I think he's still the best player in the league. He'll show it this year. Kevin Durant, the guy that a lot of people were anointing as the best player in the league, the DMV native, right? PG County native. Got a lot of love for him. Don't love what he did with the Warriors, but I got a lot of love for him. If you're the best player in the league, I don't care if James Harden is a shell of himself. I don't care if Kyrie Irving is, out for a period of time. If you're the best player in the league, you beat the Bucks. You beat the Bucks, especially in your prime. In your prime, 31, 32 years old.
Wait a second.
In the playoffs last year?
Could you not say the exact same thing about LeBron losing to the in the first round, and then
LeBron
the Bucks went on to win?
37 years old, bro. I'm talking about someone who people think.
But you're saying he's the best in the league.
No, but listen.
You just said he's the best in the league, and then you criticize KD for doing something.
Listen what I'm about to say. People. So for me, it was always LeBron since 2008, 2009. To be honest, I think he took it from Kobe, rest in peace. But I think in terms of KD taking the crown from LeBron, that's the thing, right? For me, if you want to take the crown from the best player in the league last season, you need to get out of the second round in the playoffs. And really, Gerald's saying LOL. You really need to get out of the second round of the playoffs and actually keep the Nets, in the playoffs longer and potentially, I'm not saying he had to, but potentially fighting for a championship. I know a lot of people are like, I know a lot of Nathan, our good friend. I know a lot of people are like, what do you mean? KD did everything he could. I mean, he was his feet were a couple inches away from potentially, beating the Bucks in that round. But I don't care. If you were the best player in the league, let me say this. If you want to overtake the established best player in the league over the last 12, 13 years, then you need to show me something more than just staying in the second round and not getting past that. I don't care who's around you, bro. LeBron James, listen, he had a down year last year. I'll give you that. But I'm projecting into this year, right? When I say he's the best player in the world, I'm projecting into this year. I think by the end of this season, I think he will be number one, right? I think the Lakers will win the championship, whether the Nets are fully healthy or not. And I think the fit about Russell Westbrook in LA is fully overblown. I think LeBron James is LeBron James, so we'll get that figured out. And yeah, that's my thoughts on this debate.
Well, you think the Lakers will win without Anthony Davis?
I think they'll still make the finals. I don't think they'll win it, no. But I'm counting on Davis. Actually, I know this is terrible, but I'm counting on Anthony Davis to be there for the finals this year.
If he's there, I totally agree that it's like Lakers all day, even over the Nets with Anthony. But I cannot trust him to stay healthy through the season.
Well, I can't trust Kyrie. Kyrie's the least trustable player in this league right now.
I trust Giannis. Giannis snapped his leg back and came back like the next day.
You trust Giannis? I mean, I trust Giannis, but you got to say this, man. Like, I mean, the Nets weren't the Nets last season, or at least where we thought they would be, obviously, because Kyrie wasn't there. James Harden wasn't, fully James Harden. And the Western Conference, you had the Suns making the finals. I know both of us were super high on the Suns, and we love Chris Paul and all that, but I mean, it is the Suns at the end of the day, right? It's not the Lakers. Even the Clippers didn't have Kawhi, torn ACL allegedly. Like, I don't know. I think the Bucks are very good. I don't agree, Daryl. I mean, Brooklyn. Obviously, I think it's gonna be Brooklyn versus LA. If they're both healthy, it's gonna be Brooklyn versus LA. But I think if you're talking about Anthony Davis and how reliable he is, remember, he was at least reliable on that playoff run, right? That finals run that the Lakers had a couple years back.
The bubble run where they got like 2 months off to recover.
The bubble. Oh my gosh, the bubble.
I'm not saying it's any. I'm not saying
beat out in the Western Conference.
No, I'm not saying that that it's less important, but I'm saying it was fortunate that he got a lot of rest for being such an injured pro player.
Every team got a lot of rest. I could care less.
Yeah, I know. But I'm saying that benefited him in particular.
Fair, I guess. Fair. It's not a Mickey Mouse championship though. That a lot of people.
Yeah, no, that's not what I mean.
But
KD, best player in the world. I think watching LeBron not run back on defense. Not only did LeBron not run back on defense, he was getting taunted by Jay Crowder, and that still wasn't enough to motivate him to get his ass back on defense. He was getting taunted, and he wouldn't even run back on defense.
You think KD plays out all defense every single possession? I kid you not. No, he does not. He does not.
Won 7 games in overtime at the NBA champs. That's something LeBron couldn't do.
Oh, okay. What about getting out of the second round in your prime? In your prime, you couldn't even get out of the second round in the Eastern Conference? Wow.
They lost to the NBA champions.
And
LeBron lost in the first round.
He's 37 years old. Like my point is, obviously last season wasn't the best of season for LeBron James. When I say best player in the world, for the people who are probably gonna watch earlier parts of this video, watch until the end. I am projecting into this season, much like I projected into the 2019 season, right? When LeBron James had that groin injury, right? He was out. Like, obviously he was out for most of that season, but I still had him being the best player in the world because I knew what he would ultimately become, right? During that 2019 season. I feel the same way about this 2021 season. I think LeBron James will show everybody that he's still the best player in the world. And again, the fit about Russell Westbrook and LeBron James, completely overblown in my opinion. And Anthony Davis, I know it's I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't think that he's going to be there for the finals and stuff. But I think if we're talking about the Nets and the Lakers, I trust Anthony Davis. And you know how little we all trust Anthony Davis. I trust Anthony Davis way more than Kyrie Irving. And that says a lot. So
yeah, I'm still on the KD. I'm still on the KD fan bus. But I think he'll show that he's the best player in the world, and he was the best player in the world last year.
Okay, we agree to disagree. It's kind of funny too because KD is the DMV native, but I'm going with LeBron on this one. Nathan might have been watching from earlier parts, but yeah. So I think we're going to end it there. Paul, thank you so much for joining, bro. I know I kept you a little bit over, but appreciate you. We had a lot of great conversation about the NFL, the Chicago Bears, Washington football team, who I think, pretty much the same right now in terms of if we're projecting to the future, at least in terms of 2021 season and like where they're going to be. I think both teams are probably going to be outside the playoff picture, but might be a little bit competitive towards the end of the season. We'll see. But great talk about the NFL. And then the NBA, which I love to talk about, but I don't think I talk about enough on this stream. Enjoyed that conversation. We agree to disagree on the LeBron versus KD take, much like Ed and I agree to disagree on that. But thank you so much for joining, bro. Again, thank you to everybody in the chat. Protect Sports, Gerald P, Outlaw Kings, Nathan joined a little bit late, but I appreciate you for joining nonetheless. And with that being said, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the DMV Sports Zone channel. We'll try to post fire content on here as much as possible. Also, go follow our Twitter page at DMV Sports Zone and our Instagram page, all lowercase DMV Sports Zone. Post great content on there as well. We're over 1,000K subs right now. We're trying to get to 2,000. Have a lot of great content coming for you guys. 4 great content creators on this channel, and great stuff for sure. More to come. Great stuff for sure. Soon to come. All right. See you guys on the next one, guys. Peace.